So for those of you who have heard me preach before, you know that I like to go into the kind of historical context of the text before I get too far into sermonizing. So let's look at the historical context here. And I know I've mentioned this before, and Rick has mentioned this before, so some of you might be tired of hearing about this. But the Jewish people at the time of Jesus were an oppressed people. And when Jesus came, when they heard the Messiah was here, what they heard was that they were about to be freed from oppression. In their minds, Jesus was going to come, storm the gates of Jerusalem, drive out the Romans, and return the Israelites to their place of power. Messiah, in Jewish culture, just meant anointed one. And a lot of their kings were messiahs. King David, who the book of Matthew begins by connecting Jesus to David, was a Messiah. And so when the Jewish people heard that the Messiah was here, they saw King David coming back and bringing a new golden age. And that's not what Jesus did. And so they thought, especially when they came into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, in a triumphant parade of glory, people were dropping palms, people were dropping robes, it was a celebration. They thought, maybe this is the day. Maybe this is where we finally drive the Romans out and reclaim our land. And more importantly, maybe this is where we are freed from oppression. Because as much as the Romans claimed that this time was peaceful, it was only peaceful because any sense of rebellion, they would squash immediately. Just before Jesus entered Jerusalem, and by just before I mean a couple of years, maybe a very short amount of time, there had been a huge riot in Jerusalem that the Romans had just tamped down. And in fact, that is why Jesus got crucified, is because Pontius Pilate was afraid of another riot, because the last one had been so destructive. And he knew, if we let these people riot, things are going to get bad again. And then Jesus dies. And his followers, who, even though he kept telling them, I'm going to die, they didn't quite believe him until he was on the cross. And then he comes back. And they think, yes, finally, today is the day. Now we have not only a Messiah, but a Messiah who died and came back. That must give him the power to wipe out the Romans, give us back our temples and our palaces and our land, and get rid of these oppressors once and for all. And then Jesus leaves again. And when he's leaving, his disciples say, Jesus, when are you going to do everything that we thought you were going to do? And he tells them, it's not for you to know. And this was an important message because, and again, for those of you who heard me preach the week after Easter, you've already heard this a little bit, but the Gospels were written at a time when people were realizing that Jesus was not coming back in their lifetime. This was long enough that the kids of Jesus' time were now adults, grandparents, about to die, looking at, okay, this is not happening in our generation. So this message tells them it will not happen when you think it will happen. But there's another important message to the Ascension, and that is that Jesus left humanity to do it ourselves. And this is a really important thing to know. Because, as any of you who have been in a position where you had somebody, a mentor, a boss, somebody above you who you felt like, okay, I don't have to have it all together because this person does. And I can just rely on them to do everything, and I'll just do the things that I know I can do, and never have to put myself out there to do the scary things. I'll let them do that. And that was how the disciples viewed Jesus. Because not only was he educated, he was their leader, he was also the Son of God. And it's really easy to say, okay, I don't want to face my oppressors. I don't want to challenge the status quo. I don't want to challenge the empire, because if I die, it's going to hurt. and I don't know what's going to happen to me after that. But you are the Son of God, so you can just take all that risk on yourself, and we'll just support you. And Jesus leaving was an important reminder to them and to humans in general that we don't need Jesus with us to do Jesus' work. That Jesus was not here to do it for us, but to teach us how to do it. And now we get into today's work. And like I started out the service by saying, today is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. And when Rick and I decided that I was preaching today, we had no idea that was what today was. He was just out of town this week. He's in Berkeley with their commencement, robing a new seminary graduate. So he asked me to do it, and then it was like 2 days later when Brian Henderson, the director of AWAB, emailed the whole board of AWAB and said, hey, by the way, May 17th is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. And I took a moment and I said to Rick, do you think it would be okay for me to do a sermon on that when you're gone? And he said, absolutely. And so when I look at the Ascension, the fact that it falls on Ascension Sunday seems like a pretty big message. Because so many people want somebody else to do the work. So many people say, we'll just quietly support those who are doing the work, especially churches. And this church does a better job than a lot of churches, but every church falls into the, we don't feel like it's our place. I've heard that in this church, I've heard it in other churches, where they say, the church has harmed the LGBT community so much that we don't feel like it's our place to advocate for them, more than quietly to the people who come here, maybe going to Pride, doing little things, but we don't feel like it's our place to get really involved. Or we get so focused on the idea of the separation of church and state that we feel like if we take a stand, we're violating that separation. And we are therefore denying what is one of the founding principles of Baptist churches. But Jesus left us with the message that it is our job to spread his word. And his word is justice, freedom from oppression, freedom from all the things that hurt those around us. And so when Jesus started the first Christian church with those first disciples, he was directly telling them, don't be afraid to take a stand. Don't be afraid to call out injustices when you see it. It is not my job to free you from oppression. That is your work. And someday, I'll come back. Someday, I'll come and I'll see all the good work you've done. There's a great Martin Luther King quote that the arc of justice is long, but it trends upwards. Or the arc of society is long, but it trends towards justice. Something along those lines. And at no point during that long arc of justice has Jesus shown up and done it for us. It's always been human people sitting in church pews, or Jewish synagogues, or mosques, or around a kitchen table with their friends, saying, what do we need to make this world better? Let's go out and do it. So Ascension Sunday is a really good day for us to sit and think about, what do we as a church need to do to spread Jesus' justice in our own land? And right now, this is an especially meaningful day for two reasons. One, because there is a genocide against trans people in this country right now. And in fact, just this past week, we were officially labeled as terrorists. All trans people, all pro-trans people were officially labeled as terrorists by the federal government. With the message within that statement of, we will come for you and we will kill you. So that is where we stand as a trans community, is the federal government, the president of our country, has officially said he wants us to die. And just this past week, a young trans college student was stabbed to death by somebody on her campus. And it's not really being reported about anywhere. I know about it because it's on all of the LGBT community, trans community, social media communities that I'm in. But it's not really being talked about. In fact, the fact that the federal government just labeled us as terrorists is not really being talked about. And that is what Jesus needs us to do, is to speak out against these things. One of the biggest pieces of poetry and literature that is being spread around among communities like ours right now is the poem, and I never remember the name of it, that was written during World War II. And it might just be First They Came. The first line is First They Came. And it goes through all the different oppressed communities that the Nazis came for, that the person did not speak up for until it was too late. The Nazis came for them and there was nobody left to take care of them. And it's a powerful message because it reminds us that we need to speak up as soon as we see oppression, as soon as we see another community being hurt. And this church does a great job of speaking for communities that don't have voices. We've always done a great job of that. But that's no reason for us to say we do really good, so we don't have to do anything more. There is always more that we should be and could be doing. And there is always more that we can encourage the people around us to do. I know a lot of people in my life who have no idea how bad the trans genocide is. Because we live in a city where you don't see it. I know even me, who am fairly obviously gender nonconforming, fairly obviously trans, have never really had an issue here. Partially, I don't go to places where I'm likely to have big issues. I stay away from the churches that are problematic. I stay away from restaurants and places of business that I think will be issues. But generally, I'm not somebody, when you're in Rochester, you're not going to get accosted when you're walking down the street. Generally, we're pretty lucky that way. There are places in our nation where people are getting beat up just trying to get to the store. And we can sometimes close our eyes to that because we feel like, well, we're fine here, so there's no big deal. But the Ascension calls us to fight. It's a call to us to see what can we as humans do. What can we as people of God do when we don't have Jesus right next to us? What can we do when all we have is Jesus' message for us? Jesus' stories in the Bible, the warmth of Jesus' and God's love within us, the warmth of God's love when we talk to other people. What can we do? And one of the big answers to that is we fight. And I'm not saying we go out and start punching people. I'm not calling us all to violence. Fighting has a lot of different methodologies. There's a lot of different ways to fight. And a lot of them have nothing to do with violence. We've decided, as a culture, fighting has taken on a connotation of, I'm going to go out and start punching people. I'm going to go out and start a riot. I'm going to go out and start beating people up in the streets. But that's not what fighting means. Fighting means we refuse to let the government tell us what we can and cannot say. It means we refuse to let the media tell us what is and is not important to say. When we see something wrong, we speak up and we draw attention to it. And yes, we even draw attention to ourselves. We draw attention to ourselves so that the people who are vulnerable don't have to do it. We be willing to stand on the front lines and say, this is not okay. And it is especially important for churches. Because right now, the face of Christianity in our country is the federal government. It is what the government is doing. Whether we like it or not, when people think of Christians, they think of Donald Trump. They think of the evangelicals that are pushing for anti-trans laws, anti-immigration laws, racist policies across the country. That is what people think of when they think of Christians. And so it is our job as Christians to say that is not what Jesus wanted. That is not what Jesus said. It is our job to speak up loud enough to drown out those voices. And it is our job to draw attention to us, to show people that they can follow Jesus, even if they don't agree with what's going on in this country, especially if they don't agree with what's going on in this country right now. Because so many people think, I cannot be on Jesus' side, because Jesus' side is the side of the oppressor. And that was never Jesus' side. Jesus was never an oppressor. Jesus was never meant to be an oppressor. People have taken Jesus to give their words power because they know that it will work. And if we show them that it won't work, that Jesus' words mean love and acceptance and healing and light and freedom from oppression and freedom from oppressors and freedom from genocide and tyranny and all those things that we feel we need to fight from and against, we show a better way to be Christian. And we show people that they can be Christian when they want to fight oppressors, and that there is no inherent difference and inherent battle between freedom and Christianity. Amen.
Amen.
blessing, I want to remind everybody that following the postlude, you can move into the fellowship hall and find the table with your month of birth on it and have cake. Go out from this place. Let God give you courage and strength to find your voice and say the things that need to be said and fight the fight that needs to be fought. Amen.